Hello and welcome to the 8th episode of the Racing with Rob and Roller podcast. I am Josh Roller and I am joined as always by my friend and co-host Rob Peters. Rob, say hi to the crowd.
Hello everybody.
Today we have two races from a very rainy Daytona Beach and Daytona International Speedway to discuss. That includes a surprising winner and a not so surprising winner. Wonder who those drivers could be. Plus, as promised, we have two special discussions today about the ARCA Series and the NASCAR Gander Outdoors Truck Series. But before we get started, make sure you follow Rob on Twitter at RPEETERS33 and myself at ROLLER_01. And Rob, how was your 4th of July weekend?
My 4th of July weekend was actually pretty good. I had a good time. I spent some time with my friends, spent some time with the family, got out and did some fun things. Overall, enjoyed some racing, enjoyed the Women's World Cup, enjoyed the Cricket World Cup, enjoyed the Tour de France. Just overall, a pretty darn good weekend, I'd say. It was a good weekend. Weather was good here in Indy. So, yeah, how about your?
It was good, and before we go any further, congratulations to the women's national team on their World Cup victory. They represented the U.S. in a great way. But yeah, mine was good. We worked outside on 4th of July, and my dad and I, along with my grandpa and his brother, are planning on going to a tractor show this weekend, so we're bringing the golf cart, and it was my job a couple days to test the battery and run it down, and so I did some laps in a neighborhood down the street from where I live. So it was a very productive 4th of July and a really lax weekend. So, well, now let's move on and let's get started with conversation. First with the Circle K Firecracker 250. News kind of broke before the race even started that Jeffrey Earnhardt and Extreme Concepts would not be racing. They withdrew. A little disappointing there. Jeffrey's had an excellent season in the races that he's driven in the Xfinity Series, so hopefully nothing's too wrong there. We won't draw to any major conclusions. All we kind of know is that IK9 kind of tweeted out that, hey, we are backing Jeffrey Earnhardt all the way. Austin Hill and Ettore Racing Enterprises does not make the race. They had a driveline issue in qualifying which prohibited Austin Hill from making a lap. So that was a little disappointing, I'm sure, from your side. It was nice to see a truck team move up and make a run for the Xfinity Series. There were 4 cars with those 2 people sent home. That was good to see some cars being more cars entered than could race.
Yeah, I like it sounds terrible to say I like sending guys home because I really don't, obviously, but it shows that there's good health for the series when you are sending guys home. Something we'll touch on a little bit later here is, the Cup Series isn't doing that. But it was good to see the Xfinity Series have, a lot of interest in teams running this race, with Ettore Racing wanting to run a one-off race here, and then with Kaulig Racing running a third car, things like that. That's really good to see. It shows just how special this race is, this weekend is in general. So yeah, it's pretty good.
An early aggression from the drivers. They were racing like the first lap like it was the last lap, and Chastain, I think, and Reddick were the 2 leaders of that. Chastain was not settling for second. He was racing his teammate AJ Allmendinger like he was a really foe out there.
Yeah, more like a rival than a teammate. I mean, guys were going out there, in stage 1 of the race. It's a 100-lap race, guys. You guys can. I know it's a sprint race, but there's a time and a place for it. Not in stage 1 is not the time to be blocking 4 lanes of traffic, trying to keep the lead. You got plenty of time to work your way through, and it looks like with the Xfinity package, the way it is, you can get good runs on guys. The Xfinity package I like a lot more than the Cup package, which is odd because I really like the Cup package too, but I like the Xfinity package a little bit more because, blocking doesn't create this huge air bubble. But guys were still blocking so aggressively all over the track, from seemingly the start of the race to the very end. It seemed like it didn't matter, where the race was, lap-wise. It was just, all right, we got to block, and it's just such an aggressive field out there, especially with Chastain. I mean, Chastain did what he needed to do, but just guys are all just so aggressive so early. It doesn't surprise me, but at the same time, I wish that they could take things a little bit easier.
Well, and Reddick, something I observed, Reddick had a number of issues that sent him back in the pack this race, but I think he overall had the best car. Now, we didn't see Chastain have to fight his way back deep from the field, so we can't judge him in that sense, but Reddick was able to drive his way up, drafting and side drafting, and just powered his way forward. Now, the Kaulig Racing guys, they get their cars from RCR, so that would have been an engines from RCR, so that would have been a very, I think, just the aggressiveness that Chastain was having would have been, I think, a safe bet that they two had the best two cars out there. But it was exciting to watch Reddick first get shuffled out, then he spun, and then he had another issue late that sent him back to the field. He had to drive forward again. So just fun to watch those guys out there racing. So two big wrecks take out some guys who had some really good runs. Ryan Sieg and Timmy Hill were having top 6, 7 position runs, and it was disappointing for them and their teams, particularly Ryan Sieg, who had a bad June and lost some points on 13th. Still 12th in points, but he lost some positions there.
Didn't they also get new sponsorship for the rest of the season too?
Yeah, they got a 5-race deal this year, and then full sponsorship for next year for that race team. That's great to see.
It's great to see for them, but it's tough to see their race end like that, especially coming off an announcement like that. But yeah, Timmy Hill was really kind of took me by surprise there. Timmy Hill's not a guy that you typically see running up front, especially not with the team that he's with. You don't typically see those guys running up front, MBM, Carl Long's team, but it was very, very refreshing almost to see him up there. Up, I think he was running up 4th or something. I looked up at the screen and I was like, man, look at that Timmy Hill go! Yeah. Look at him go! Timmy, come on, let's go!
And Ryan Sieg was about was in contention to win a stage.
Yes, he was, and so it was and I think sometimes they talk about the plate races being those great equalizers, and it's quite interesting to kind of just see that be true. You have two big accidents that take out a lot of contenders and a lot of really, really good drivers, and then you kind of end up seeing what some of the guys that were running around at the back actually have, and you kind of see that their cars can perform pretty decently in the draft, especially Timmy Hills was hanging in there, not falling off the pace, actually hanging around with the leaders, not getting passed, not getting shuffled, really just showing that, yeah, he can stay up here, stay up front and race. I think it's a really good sign for, those small teams when you can be able to run up front on your own, albeit with the draft, but still on your own with a lot of those experienced guys. I'm certain it was great for Timmy Hill, probably getting a ton of that experience that he probably needed. Ryan Sieg, I feel like, has enough experience running.
Oh, definitely.
So probably wasn't all that different for him, but still a great run for both of those guys. Just a shame that the overall race didn't pan out the way it probably could have for them.
Yeah, and for a team that has just put in a lot of effort, I think Ryan Sieg Racing and Clements Racing, I think those two teams have just made so big of strides over the past 5 years. And while I think Clements Racing has a little bit ways to go, they're running in the top 15 a lot, and Sieg has moved his way into the top 10, which is great to see. Another team that's made some pretty big strides, Kaulig Racing. That was a good feel-good story out of the weekend. 4th season. Their best finish going into this race was 4th. As an organization, their best finish was 4th. Matt Kaulig wanted a trophy. He said, I'm going to bring a 3rd car, and I'm going to put Ross Chastain in it. Well, it worked out for him, didn't it?
It worked out probably way better than I would have expected it to work out. I mean, sometimes I feel like, the media hypes up certain things. Like, they talk about, oh, so-and-so's running a bunch of cars. Oh, we've got, like, an all-star in this race in Chastain and A.J. Allmendinger. I was like, okay, so they're making a big deal about this, but, are they going to win? Because I feel like the last time, something like that happened, we saw, in this race, I should say, it was a big deal when Dale Jr. ran the 3 again. But there was a lot of question beforehand. Was like, okay, can he win the race? Is he going to win the race? Is he going to be good enough to win the race? And sure enough, he did. And in this case, it felt a lot kind of like that. Obviously not the gravity of it, because you're never going to really change that moment in history when Dale Jr. won in the 3, because it was such a huge deal for NASCAR, for fans, for everybody. But it felt kind of like, hey, these guys are here just to win this race, and here they come out and they do just that. They were originally 1, 2, 3 with Haley and Allmendinger completing rounding out positions 2 and 3, but Allmendinger was DQ'd for not passing the vacuum test, which I genuinely didn't even know was a thing. But I guess
didn't know there was a thing either. But it makes complete sense the way it is described.
Yeah, it does. So it's unfortunate that probably if Allmendinger hadn't finished third, nobody would have even noticed it. Noticed that problem. But
and it kind of makes you wonder. We talk about the DQs that have happened. The first 2 DQs now with Chastain and Bell, was it that big of an issue with it being low? But this one actually probably did, and he might have saw it out there. Allmendinger had to fight his way back up and got to third on the last lap. That little bit of power, if you don't have that, the vacuum seals for the restrictor plates, it's sealed up to actually reduce the horsepower and RPMs that the engine's able to turn and produce. Well, it was not sealed all the way, and therefore he's able to turn more RPMs and get more horsepower. And we might have saw that out there at the end. So this one would be like, okay, I'm okay with maybe this DQ, because it actually might have given him an advantage, and it does give you an advantage here. I love, and I've tweeted about this, I love the excitement that Ross Chastain brings, but then you also saw Matt Kaulig and everyone on top of that pit box was just, they were so excited to finally get that first victory. And Justin Haley said after the race, I might have been able to make a move, but I settled in for a second to get the team a win. That's a huge team player. If that's the way he's really truly feeling, that's great. And even if it's not, it's a good line. Chris Rice was just as jubilant in victory lane, and even gave a very quick nod to Blake Cook, which I appreciated. Blake Cook was their first driver a few years ago, and just an absolute. And Ross Chastain celebrates a victory like it's the Daytona 500 each week, and I love it.
I loved everything about the aftermath of the race. I think Justin Haley did the right thing. It's kind of hard.
Sure.
It's kind of hard to sit back and run second when you have a car that can win. You're in the position to probably make a move in the last lap. But I think for Haley, it was a situation where don't risk it. You've got a bunch of hungry guys running right up on you. If you make a move, maybe with 1 to go, 2 to go, or something like that, you risk maybe derailing this huge run for your team. And I think when he had Ross out in front of him and AJ out behind him, I think he probably had to have sat there and thought, maybe I should just kind of be content with where I'm going to run. And hey, it turned out to be just pretty okay for him in the overall weekend of it. So,
and the good point is AJ also had that, and it's a good point stay for Haley, where you have other guys who had issues, those around him, and those points come in very a premium at this point of the year, particularly after this race. We talk about the playoff picture with that. We were discussing here before, and I really don't know. You didn't get an answer from yet, but I think we kind of know who's going to be in the Xfinity playoffs. Ryan Sieg has a 91-point advantage over 13th place Gray Gaulding, and over 125-point advantage over Brandon Brown in 14th. So unless there is a surprise winner at a road course like Jeremy Clements pulled at Road America a few years ago, I think we might know who the 12 drivers in the Xfinity Series are going to be, because Cindric, Allgaier, Gragson, Hunter Nemechek, Haley, Annette, Briscoe, and Jones, I think, can win any of these next few races. They have the cars and equipment and teams capable of doing that. And Ryan Sieg, again, he's like I mentioned before, that team's made so many gains over the past few seasons. I think we know who it's going to be.
I think we do too. That's the thing about the Xfinity Series, is there's really only ever been maybe 10 competitive cars since we introduced the playoff system. So those last two spots are really kind of more wild cards, if anything. So looking at it right now, you see Chase Briscoe in 10th, Brandon Jones in 11th, Ryan Sieg in 12th. It kind of makes you think, well, I don't think those guys are going to win anytime soon, but I don't think they're going to finish any worse than where they're finishing now. And I don't think Greg Galding is going to be able to make up the point differential on Ryan Sieg in the next in the next few races, because we're closing in shortly. It's about a month or so. We're a month or so out of the cutoff. So I think, you're in a situation where that's why it kind of made me wonder, Justin Haley probably could have gone for the win, but I don't think he had to. I think given his points position now, given where he is, and given where he typically runs, he's going to make the playoffs. It's just all a matter of, all right, now you've got to accumulate some playoff points, get some stage wins here, probably solidify yourself for later on in the season. But overall, he's going to get locked in no matter what, because he's comfortably 8th. He's comfortably in there. He scored more points than Michael Annett, who actually has a win. So, I got to say, we know what the point situation is going to be. It's just all a matter of who's going to be that Final Four at Homestead come November.
Well, with that said, we're going to move on to our first permanent segment of the weekend. It's the featured paint scheme, and this year we did the 1992 NASCAR Winston Cup Series. A little background here. The 1992 Winston Cup Series is probably one of the greatest championship battles in NASCAR history, which came down to the season finale at Atlanta Motor Speedway. After 28 races, the final race, the Hooters 500, saw 6 drivers who were eligible to win the championship. Davey Allison entered as the points leader over Alan Kulwicki by 30 points, Bill Elliott by 40, Harry Gant by 97, Kyle Petty by 98, and Mark Martin by 113. Remember, the point system was a little bit different back then, how many points are awarded per race.
I also love the Kyle Petty's in there, because 1992 was definitely one of Kyle Petty's best seasons in Cup. So that's actually kind of cool to see and remember that, Kyle Petty was actually pretty competitive at that time. And Harry Gant, too. How about that?
Yeah.
Mr. September, Harry Gant.
Handsome Harry.
Yep.
So by the end of the race, though, Kulwicki prevailed to win the championship by just 10 points over Awesome Bill from Dawsonville. That final race also was a clash of two eras. The King, Richard Petty, was making his final career start after 1,184 career starts in 35 seasons and 200 victories. Jeff Gordon would make his Winston Cup debut and would eventually tally 108 starts over 25 seasons and 93.
805 starts, you missed.
805, what did I say? 805 victories.
You said 108. And I was like, I don't think that's how many Jeff Gordon started.
Sorry about that. 805 starts, 25 seasons, and 93 race victories. So, Rob, in 1992, what was your featured paint scheme?
Okay, so 1992 was kind of an interesting choice because, I've always been very fascinated with those early 90s paint schemes, early 90s car designs, things like that. And so I wanted to pick out one that, was common but not so common. And so I went ahead and I picked A.J. Foyt's number 14 Copenhagen Oldsmobile that he ran in the 1992 Daytona 500. And the reason why I picked this, and it was only like a one-off race for Foyt, but 1992 was supposed to be A.J. Foyt's kind of swan song, and this was supposed to be his last Daytona 500. This was supposed to be his last Indy 500. This was supposed to be, everybody gets a chance to say goodbye to A.J. Foyt. In the same respect that, everybody was saying goodbye to Richard Petty as well. This was really all right, the tide is officially turning. We're seeing new drivers come in, like you mentioned, Jeff Gordon come right in. And so it was interesting to see this. So this was a car that A.J. Foyt, ran identical to the paint scheme that he ran in his IndyCar Series car, in the CART Series at the time. And so he was planning to retire from racing, but he did attempt to qualify for the 1993 Indianapolis 500 before being, he did not qualify for that race. But he ended up coming back to Indianapolis in 1994, to run the Brickyard 400. The inaugural Brickyard 400, yeah. And then he came back to Indianapolis in 95 and 96, attempting to qualify for both of those races. Did not make the show in either of those. But I've always been kind of fascinated with A.J. Foyt's stock car career because, I feel like we know him so much for his accomplishments in open wheel racing. It just not just in kart and USAC, but in sprint cars as well. Foyt did a ton of amazing things out there when it came to running races. But his stock car career is for some reason forgotten about. He did win the Daytona 500 in '72, and he won in Ontario as well that same season, which was, I believe, a race or two after Daytona. So Foyt had a pretty decent stock car career that we don't really talk about. But in the 1992 Daytona 500, Foyt started 39th and finished 21st for B&B Racing, which I didn't know existed. And there's not even like a Wikipedia article on B&B Racing. So I
read word.
Yeah, I had to. It took me a while to look up anything about them, and there's not really much to find, at least on the internet. Probably looking around in some books might help me, but I didn't have enough prep time for that. So, but yeah, and that was his finish in Daytona. But however, in the 500 that later year, he would finish a very respectable 9th place to finish off his Indianapolis 500 career. So yeah, I went with A.J. Foyt's car because I think it's a beautiful looking car. It's definitely a relic of the time, and plus I love Oldsmobiles. I'm an Oldsmobile man. I don't know if anybody knows this about me, but my favorite cars are Oldsmobiles, even though they don't make them anymore. I love Oldsmobiles. I love the way the Oldsmobile stock car looked in the early 90s and late 80s. So that's why I picked that as my featured paint scheme. But Josh, you have a kind of a similar paint scheme, similar type of sponsor, I guess, with the tobacco line.
I was just about to say that I would never guess that we both chose chewing tobacco sponsored Oldsmobile car. That's great. But I chose Rick Mast, number 1 Skull Classic. He drove for Precision Products Racing, and again, it was an Oldsmobile. I always liked the Skull cars. It didn't matter, what team or driver was behind the wheel or what number it was. Just always were good-looking cars. I think some of that just comes from the respect I have for Harry Gant and what he accomplished, and a lot of people wish he would have accomplished. But it was his black with white base and gold lining, and I love the styling of the number 1. If you're trying to picture what the styling is, think of the DEI number 1 that Steve Park, Jeff Green, and Martin Truex Jr. drove, and what basically Michael Annett drives today with the 1 car in 2019 for Junior Motorsports. And like you, I think anytime you can kind of pick that off manufacturer like an Oldsmobile or Buick, you kind of got to go for it. He competed in all 29 races that year. His best finish was his only top 10 of the year, which was the 9th at the fall race at Martinsville. He finished 22nd in the final standings, 1,248 points off from champion Alan Kowicki, and maybe the highlight of the season and for the team was he sat on the pole in the Hooters 500, which, as I alluded to earlier, I think is one of the greatest races in NASCAR history, just because of the championship run, the clash of the eras, and it was at Old Atlanta.
Well, hey, I mean, speaking of parallels too, I made a comparison to Foyt's run at the 1994 Brickyard. Guess who sat on the pole for that race?
That was Rick Mast.
Yes, it was Rick Mast.
I'm going to say this right now. If Kurt Busch does not run a Rick Mast throwback scheme, it's just going to be a tragedy because that needs to happen. I know maybe Monster Energy doesn't want to put themselves on a line with a paint scheme that was with chewing tobacco, but not too many people I think are going to make that connection unless you get on Twitter. So just stay off Twitter if you don't want the connection.
I guess, yeah. I mean, I would be fine with Kurt Busch running a throwback. I mean, there's tons of throwbacks that you can run every year. I think Corey LaJoie just revealed they're doing a Dale Jarrett throwback this morning. So I love those throwbacks. I'm so glad we do that now.
Yes, it's a great thing. So moving on to one of these special segments of the day, we're going to outline. I'll go first, and then Rob will go. We're going to outline how we think ARCA needs to be integrated, because I think we've discussed it's not the ARCA that we kind of grew up with. It's definitely not our grandpa's ARCA. So here's how I think it should be set up. At the top is obviously going to be the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series, and I'm going to kind of speak in terms of baseball. So the AAA would be the Xfinity Series, the AA would be Truck Series. I mean, I think that's kind of how it is today. Now I will touch on later how the Truck Series should be made up, and some of this will make sense later. But High A, because there is a low and High A in baseball and in minor league baseball, would be the K&N West Pro Series, K&N East Pro Series, and then we would create a Menards Central Pro Series because Menards is the sponsor for the ARCA Series currently. Each of these would be approximately 12 races long, maybe 10 to 12, and would run from February to June. So you'd be crowning 3 NASCAR champions in June for the K&N West, East, and Central Series, Menards Central Series. Each would have at least 1 road course and 1 dirt race. The other 10 would be short paved ovals. All right, kind of like the way the K&N East and West are made up now. And these 3 series would have the championship kind of combined then later to run an ARCA championship series that would be 10 races and run from July to November. So you take like the top 10 drivers and teams from these 3 series, individual regional series, and run a super championship basically at the end of the year. Now it's kind of what we're looking at, coming up with how NASCAR will integrate it with, but you're not going to have that Central Series, and it's going to be integrated with the ARCA schedule already. I think it's just kind of confusing. This simplifies it and makes it a little more uniform in my eyes. So, like I said, that the ARCA Championship would run from July to November and would include 1.5 mile track and the 2 dirt tracks at Springfield and DuQuoin, so we keep those alive and well because those are just 2 awesome and historic races at the end of the day. And then the low A would be the NASCAR Pinty Series, which runs in Canada, the NASCAR Peak Mexico Series, the NASCAR Whelen Modified Series, and the NASCAR Whelen Euro Series. That's the way I think it should be. So really, kind of at the end of the day, I would be more so specifying the levels, and then I would be breaking up ARCA. I'm sorry, I'm going to be unapologetic about it, but ARCA is not the ARCA it was 5 years ago even, and it's certainly not what it was 2 decades ago. So, Rob, what are your thoughts?
All right, so my thoughts are a bit. I don't know how to describe this specifically, but I'm kind of, I like to look at things from a perspective of what I would like to see this turn out to be. I want to see ARCA used a little bit differently. I see what point you're going, and I think that's probably what NASCAR might end up doing anyway. But in a perfect world where I have my way, which Lord knows not many people would want, but in a perfect world where I have my way, this is how I would see it going. So you already have the top tier is being the Cup. That's cut and dry. But AAA. Going again to the baseball analogies, AAA really should be Xfinity and Truck, where it's kind of like, those we know, I guess, are the companion events. Those we know are, those are stepping stones for young drivers. Those are, opportunities for drivers to get experience and run on bigger races, but also shorter ovals, stuff like that. But here's where I see ARCA falling in kind of instead of what you were going with. Is I see ARCA kind of just being its own thing, or maybe just taking over AA altogether, where it's a stepping stone, but it can also be, still a series for drivers that want to race on big ovals, want to race on super speedways, things like that, but in a more cost-effective way, which I think ARCA provides. ARCA provides that kind of, okay, you can run a composite body out here. You've got the ARCA Ilmore engines. Okay, you've got kind of a spec engine here. It's a bit easier to run. More incentive for guys to run, and housing it under the NASCAR banner, I think would hopefully help with some of the field sizes in there. So you just kind of rework it. You don't necessarily change it to make it a regional series. You just kind of rework it into something more, trying to make it bigger than what it is now. Don't leave the roots. Still go to Daytona, still go to Talladega, still go to Chicagoland, Kansas, places like that. But keep going to the short tracks. Run more short tracks. Run more road courses as well. Go back to some road courses. Don't run companion events necessarily, unless ARCA is the main draw. If you want to run an ARCA race at, say, Colorado, along with the K&N Series, I'd say do it. But make the ARCA race the big draw. Not the K&N Series. Make the ARCA race the big draw. That's what I'd like to see, ultimately. I think that that's where I think it should be, where, there's an old saying where they called it the ABC program, the ARCA Busch Cup program. And the reason why I see ARCA needing to be kind of more of its own thing, kind of a stepping stone still, though, is because those cars are actually, similar to Cup cars. The aerodynamics are kind of more or less the same. The cars look the same. The cars arguably may drive a little bit the same. Far more than you would get in an Xfinity Series car or a Truck Series car. Because those are, as we've stated, those are very different. And I think you could make the ARCA cars kind of more like underpowered Cup cars. And so it would give drivers a much better chance to see what it's like to run these kinds of Cup cars, so that eventually when they get up to that point, they have a starting ground. They're not going in cold turkey being like, oh, I just ran a truck and an Xfinity car, which handle differently, that drive differently, that race differently, set up differently, all that stuff like that. You're taking an ARCA car that drives extremely similar to a Cup car and basing your starting knowledge around that. So that's where I put ARCA in, and then underneath ARCA, like I said, would be K&N, Pinty's, Peak Mexico Series, Whelen Modifieds, and Whelen Euro Series. Those are kind of like your regional series. Those are the regional series that kind of go. But ARCA, I understand it to be more of a Midwest series, which is what it is. But I don't see why it couldn't go to a place like Colorado and be like a main draw. Along with the K&N, and maybe kind of be more of an incentive to get more K&N teams to join ARCA, because the regulations are similar, the cost is low, things like that. That's really what I kind of see ARCA becoming. I don't think it will be that, though. I don't think, unfortunately, that's what it will be, but if I had my way, that's what would happen. So That's really where I'm going. I know it's a lot different from yours, Josh, but that's kind of where I'm looking at it.
I think, honestly, I think it's either going to be your way or my way is what's going to happen. I think NASCAR will evaluate what the ARCA series is. I think it's possible we could see the ARCA series being the highest division for regional stuff, if you mean. So ARCA would serve the role of Cup Series, and the K&Ns and the Modifieds would serve the role of the Xfinity and Truck as it currently stands. I could see that, and I think is that kind of what you're talking about a little bit?
Yeah, that's really what I'm kind of talking about. Go when you're going with ARCA, make sure that ARCA is the main draw. Because you want to hype this series up. You want to hype the series up more than they do now. Because right now, I think the main problem with ARCA is that, first of all, it's on MAV TV, so how many people could be able to watch it?
And they have, their social media is, I will volunteer running their social media for free.
For real. They need to get the word out about ARCA, not just to potential drivers, but to potential owners, to potential sponsors. It genuinely amazes me that a series that is fully sponsored by John Menard has zero social media presence whatsoever. Mm-hmm. None of that. It's so difficult to actually find an ARCA race, on TV, to find ARCA information on websites, through the internet, things like that. This should not be that hard. So really, that's really what NASCAR needs to do first and foremost, is actually attempt to make ARCA a big deal again.
Mm-hmm. Well, and now we'll go ahead and move on to, and then we can have maybe a little discussion afterwards again. how we think the Truck Series should view. I know Rob and I, we've had spirited conversations with this in the office before. Hour-long conversations. We're going to try and scrunch it down to a few minutes here. So, Rob, since I went first with the last one, why don't you go ahead and take the reins first on this topic?
Okay, so my fix to the Truck Series might contradict what I said about the ARCA Series, but this is not what I think they're going to do. This is more of what I think they should do. So, bear with me. There are some discrepancies between these two, between what I said about what should happen to ARCA and what I'm going to include here.
To be fair, they are kind of independent conversations that we're going to clash later.
Right. So just to put that out there ahead of time, so nobody gets confused and think, oh, but you just said ARCA should be this. Why is okay? So I believe that the Truck Series must serve two roles. First and foremost, it must serve as a quote-unquote fun series. Cost-effective, easy to get into, a testing ground for new rules and packages. It must be attractive to senior drivers and young drivers alike. Do not market it as a junior series. Market it as its own thing, not a support series. And what I mean by that is stop running Truck Series races with Cup Series races on companion events. Enough of that. I love Truck Series races on Friday nights. But I love them. I would love them a lot more if they were independent. They were at short tracks. They were, kind of doing their own little schedule. Now, you can still run some companion events. Like, I don't have a problem with them running Daytona. I don't have a problem with them running Talladega. I don't have a problem with them running Homestead, things like that. That stuff is all good and fine with me. I think there are some events that should be companion events, but not all of them. The whole season should not be just following around the Cup Series. I don't mind them having sharing that weekend with IndyCar Texas. I think that's a great thing for them. I don't mind that at all. Things like that are totally fine with me. But it must serve as a testing ground for new rules, but also new markets. The Truck Series needs to have a more flexible schedule than it does now, because I feel like NASCAR, with the Truck Series, has kind of locked them in to this, all right, we're going to go to these specific, we have to go to these specific tracks, and all these specific tracks have to be companion dates. Well, we need to get rid of some of those tracks that are companion dates, because we don't need the Truck Series to be racing at Pocono. We don't need the Truck Series, to be racing at a place like, Kansas. We don't need the Truck Series to be going to, places like that. We need the Truck Series to be more on short ovals. So I believe it needs to be 60% short tracks, 20% intermediate, and 20% super speedway road course. So the majority of the season is by itself short tracks. And this can be dirt track. This can be, half-mile paved ovals, high bank, low bank, doesn't matter. I don't care. If the Truck Series wants to go ahead and run at Colorado II, there shouldn't be anything stopping them. If they want to run an Evergreen, take them back to Evergreen. Take them, you have these contracts in place with the K&N Series. There's nothing wrong with taking the Truck Series there and having K&N be the support series race for that. That would be ideal. Or taking the Truck Series and kind of merging those contracts and saying, all right, well, we're going to run the Truck Series and ARCA as a doubleheader weekend. We're going to run, say, the ARCA race here at Madison, and then we're going to run the trucks here, too. Or we're going to run ARCA at, Nashville, and we're going to run the Truck Series, too. Try out new markets. And when I say that, and I say, like I said, ideally it would feature companion events with ARCA and K&N races. Truck Series and ARCA would be the main two draws of the weekend, with K&N serving as the support series. Now, again, if you would like to branch out of the country, there's nothing wrong, again, with running companion Pinty's races and companion Peak Mexico Series races. Do I think that NASCAR would do that? No, but I think that would be a very great way to show off the Truck Series as its own thing, rather than just a companion series. If you say, oh, hey, we're going to run a race here at Jukasa with the Pinty Series up in Canada, I don't think that there should be any problem with that. That could be a thing. Or, if you want to say, hey, Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez down in Mexico actually has a short oval track, or at least it did at one point. I don't know if they do anymore, but you can kind of run something similar to the Formula E layout, where it's kind of like a glorified oval anyway. You could do something similar like that. Or maybe, just another track in Mexico. I know there's plenty of short tracks down there in Mexico. I just can't think of them off the top of my head because I never get a chance to watch the Mexico Series. But another thing that it would do is, ideally, this truck series would feature exhibition races during the off-season. This is something that NASCAR did with the Winter Heat Series. This is something that would be wonderful not only for drivers, but also for fans, and also for an opportunity to test new markets, which is something that I harped on hard. Test short track markets, maybe down in Texas, Louisiana, Florida, Arizona, New Mexico, and Southern California. Places like that certainly have racetracks that would probably be fine for a truck series event to run at. I sit there and I think about Five Flags down in Tallahassee, or where is it? Is it in Tallahassee? Pensacola, sorry. It's on the Florida Panhandle, so that's why I thought Tallahassee. But, I think about something like that. That's a warm climate. They run the Snowball Derby down there. You could run a race there in January. And you could have it probably be fairly successful. I think about running a race at Phoenix in the Truck Series, or ISM, whatever it's called today. You could probably run an exhibition race there. Maybe grab some people who are a little bit bored. I think about some of the short tracks in Texas. There's certainly some short tracks in Texas that would love to have the Truck Series run there in the winter, in January, or in late November, or in December, or something like that. Those are all things that I'm talking about. And also it has to be cost effective. So you need to make it a spec series. You need to make it a spec series, kind of like ARCA is a spec series, in that, run one engine. They're all sealed engines. Every team runs kind of the same engine. You have different manufacturers, though, that provide different support to the different trucks. So you'd still have Chevrolet, Toyota, Ford, providing actual, equipment and help, but also new experimental sponsorship models to help boost payouts. Because I think that's something NASCAR definitely wants to look into, is they have been changing up their sponsorship model. They want to go to this tiered system. Well, why try that out in the Cup Series right away when you can test the waters with it in the Truck Series? If you make the Truck Series this guinea pig, it's going to be more interesting because, I thought I felt like I thought the caution clock was stupid. And the caution clock was stupid. But the thing that made it kind of have some kind of odd charm to it was a test. It was entirely an experiment before we went to stage racing. It was an entirely new experiment that led to stage racing that told us, oh, hey, this is cool. Imagine if we had just done stage racing in the Truck Series. And you mentioned this in yours. You wanted to mention this, but I wanted to bring it up too, is, you could totally have stages in these races and pit the cars during that time, non-competitive pit stops. Have a halftime break after each stage. Things like that. Engage with the fans. Allow the fans, we see Bubba Wallace on Sunday going out there throwing a football with fans. Why not have a bunch of drivers get out of their cars and throw T-shirts at the fans and then get right back in their cars and go run another 50 laps? Something like, make it an event. Make it a big deal. That's what I'd like to see the Truck Series be. No more of this companion event thing. Go to those short tracks, around the country. Have it be like a big old tour. You can have some midweek races. Use it as a testing ground for midweek races. We see that Eldora is run on Wednesday night, and it's a success. Well, I've got an idea. Why don't you run some races on Monday night? There's going to be an absence after Monday Night Football. There's nothing wrong with you guys trying Monday Night NASCAR at a short track in, early February or late January when Monday Night Football ends. You can fill a void for people looking for something to watch on TV that way too. So really, there's a lot of options here, and I've rolled over a lot of them. But Josh, why don't you get into how your ideas for how to fix the Truck Series would look?
Well, there's definitely some parallels between our ideas, and then this is where mine, going back to how I believe the Truck Series should be and how ARCA should be integrated. This is where they coincide. They mesh together for mine, where the Truck Series is that AA role where, for my ideas, is how they clash. So I believe the Truck Series should serve a few different roles. One, it needs to be a destination series for a couple different types of drivers. The 20-year-old veteran who has more years left on his race career, like Greg Biffle. We saw like Greg Biffle came back and at Texas and wins a race. And kind of, no, I don't mean any offense to these drivers, but like your Elliott Sadler and Justin Allgaiers, where maybe they didn't have the success in the Cup Series that they wanted to, or wasn't able to get the best ride, so they go down to the Xfinity Series, and now they're performing really well. They go down to the Truck Series and they race and just having fun and still winning races because they know they can still be competitive, but maybe they couldn't get that competitive ride in the Cup Series. So to kind of be that type of a role, and then be the short track racer who wants to race at a higher level with a TV audience, but doesn't want to go Cup racing. And that's kind of what the Truck Series was for the first few years. You have a lot of these short track guys, kind of like what Mike Skinner was, and Mike Skinner just decided to hop on the Cup wagon too. So, and then eventually found his way back down to the trucks, and he still short track races today. What if that was? He could be easily in the Truck Series right now if they were just doing a lot more short tracks. And then it'd be the series in like a third way, introducing more powerful and bigger tracks to younger drivers or new drivers. Not new drivers don't have to necessarily be younger drivers. And then it needs to be in that way it's a stepping stone for those types of drivers. Because they're racing with veterans and not just all 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds, but they're racing with guys like Matt Crafton, Johnny Sauter, your Mike Skinners, your Jack Spragues, your Ron Hornadays, and such like that, and maybe your Elliott Sadlers and Justin Allgaiers. So kind of you're looking for three different drivers in this series, and I think you just create for something excellent and exciting, and that'll come out here a little bit more. So kind of like Rob, I kind of laid out how the schedule should look. They should go to Daytona and Talladega. Keep going there because that's part of the introduction to the larger tracks. Under my idea before, ARCA doesn't go in the K&N in Menard Central Series doesn't go to a super speedway. So now you introduce that super speedway to these drivers. And of course you still have 16-year-olds racing, and obviously I wouldn't want a 16-year-old racing at Daytona or Talladega, but you get to a certain age, you can start racing there. They go to two road courses, one of which is Mosport, Canadian Tire Motorsports Park. I love it when the trucks go to Canada up there. It's an excellent race. I love that race every year. It's been controversial finishes, just about everyone. It's a fantastic race. But they could go to a Sonoma, a Mid-Ohio, a Watkins Glen, or like a Heartland Park, Topeka. They used to go there back in the 90s. Let's go back. Let's go to a different track. They need to have 3 mile-and-a-half races, and these could kind of rotate a little bit which ones they go to. I like the Texas double feature with IndyCar and trucks. I think that's something that I would like to see stay under my idea, but the other two you could definitely rotate around a little bit. And again, going back to my model before where you had the mile-and-a-half race, maybe that mile-and-a-half race could be a companion event with the Truck Series for that ARCA Championship Series. It could be a companion event, if not the championship race, and you were there with the Truck Series in November or late October type of time frame. You continue to go to Gateway and Eldora. Gateway's I love Gateway, and I love the racing there. The Xfinity Series needs to be there in 21. And Eldora has quickly become one of my favorite races, and I think many people's favorite races of the NASCAR calendar. So continue going there. So to kind of recap so far, you got Daytona and Talladega, 2 road courses. That's 4 races. Add 3 mile-and-a-halfs. That's 7. And Eldora and Gateway. So there's 9 races right there. The rest of the calendar would be short tracks. 25 to 28 races, I think, would be a good number. And these are mile-and-a-half or mile 1.0 mile tracks or less. And particularly in markets where the Cup Series doesn't go. Now, some of them might be companion events, like your Martinsville, your Richmond, your Bristols, your ISM raceways. Those might be companion events, because I think there is a point where there do need to be some companion events so that you can introduce them to the Cup Garage and the Xfinity Garage and Xfinity and Cup owners. But they also need to be on their own and be an independent and not be a support series. So some of the tracks would be, again, Martinsville, Richmond, Bristol, Iowa, okay? But Nashville Fairgrounds, Myrtle Beach, Memphis, IRP, Rockingham. I mean, the state of North Carolina really wants to get that track back. I think the Truck Series would be a great series to get them back there. ISM Raceway, Milwaukee Mile, that needs to happen. Oxford Plains up in Maine. Kern County Raceway Park, that's in California. It's a short track. Evergreen in Washington, Five Flags, as Rob mentioned. Orange County, Hickory, South Boston, Winchester, Salem, Toledo. These types of tracks need to fill the schedule.
You had me at Winchester.
There you go. So you need to, those types of tracks you need to go to. And what that opens up, it's not every race, like you mentioned, needs to have competitive pit stops, folks. It doesn't need to. The Truck Series had those breaks, like you mentioned, where they get out and they work. The Eldora model is such a great model, and it needs to be implemented more because, one, because pitting in the lower series when you get to the Truck Series or ARCA right now, is a kind of a foreign concept. So this gives them, again, with going back to my model before with how the hierarchy should work, this introduces competitive pit stops to teams, but not every week, and to those younger drivers, or new, and not necessarily the old and the veterans, but the new and the youth drivers. It's a cost-saving maneuver. Teams wouldn't need to pay for 13-second pit stops to win a race. They have the Xfinity or Cup team guys or a clash of them pitting a truck. And because many tracks like Oxford Plains doesn't have enough pit stalls. So therefore, you can go to those tracks and you don't have to run competitive pit stops. You can have that 5-minute break where you bring the first 10 cars or however many cars down pit road that you could fit safely. And you say if you pit, you don't lose a position unless someone stays out. That's the only way you lose a position, and I'm completely fine with that. But it also allows them to have that fabricator who's not the most athletic guy in the world to change a tire or to jack up a tire because you have 5 minutes on the clock to work on your car. All right, and you just sit there when the 5-minute clock's up. Trucks start rolling out pit. It's simple. And again, it opens up the number of facilities. How many of these tracks can go to. And you maybe don't even have to, if you have enough pit stalls, maybe you don't even need to run competitive pit stops at those tracks. Like a Myrtle Beach. They have enough pit stalls, but you wouldn't necessarily need to run a competitive pit stop race there. I kind of one, asterisk I put behind there, is if you're running a companion event with the Cup Series, run competitive pit stops with them. So Daytona, Talladega have competitive pit stops. And another side note, going back to the tracks like Oxford Plains, maybe FS1 or NBC could come in there, whoever's doing the broadcast, film a big race that weekend. Or the Truck Series might be the main attraction, but it maybe isn't the biggest race for that track because Oxford Plains runs to Oxford Plains 250 in late August. The Truck Series goes there with them. They run their race maybe the day before. They're live, but FS1 and Fox stays in records the Oxford Plains 250 and airs it at a later date. I think it's just, to me, it's a massive opportunity for a track like that. So if NASCAR were able to integrate that into the schedule, would just be fantastic. And like I said, to sum up, the Truck Series needs to act as a kind of intermediary between the K&N and ARCA in the Xfinity and Cup. It needs to be a stepping stone in a developmental series, but it also needs to be a destination series for drivers who don't have a desire to go super big-time racing, but also drivers who want to have a few more years and they just want to go and run competitive trucks and maybe be that mentor. Maybe they have a desire to be a mentor, and I don't know if they have the ability to do that right now in the Truck Series. This will give the Truck Series its own identity again, and not be the support series that it is, because to me it plays third fiddle too many times, even though the racing can be as exciting, if not more exciting, than the Cup Series, but the Truck Series needs to be its own deal. So it needs to be that middle ground, and that's why I had it at its own level and like a AA spot compared to what Rob. No offense to Rob, but that's compared to what Rob had. So, wow, I talked there a lot.
No, I mean, that's okay. I think it's a good discussion for us to have. It's always fun to kind of think about what we as fans would like to see happen in the future with NASCAR and with certain series, especially series that are really going through identity crises right now. Crises, excuse me. Like the Truck Series and like ARCA. Those series are really, they're struggling. They don't they don't really know what they need to be.
The sport of motorsport has changed, and racing has changed, and I don't know. I think there were changes and decisions made in the Truck Series that hurt it before this occurred, and now we're seeing where we wanted more short tracks, and the Truck Series once had that.
Yeah, absolutely. The Truck Series was the original short track house. It introduced me, and I'm sure many others, to a ton of different short tracks that were around the world that were way cooler than we could have ever imagined, and it really got a lot of people inspired to, support their local short track, which is, I think, something that NASCAR needs to do more to promote that idea of actually supporting your local short track. So I'm going to go ahead here. If Josh, you don't have anything else to add, do you?
No, go ahead.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and move on here. We're going to talk about the big race of the weekend that spanned quite literally what felt like forever. The Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series Coke Zero Sugar 400, and I'm going to try and breeze through this so we can get to our big discussion point about this event. So the manufacturer wars happened. Chevrolet called a meeting and individual calls to owners to kind of incentivize Chevrolet teams to work together. Ford pitted together, and then Chevrolet's pitted together next lap with the Toyotas pitting the lap after that. So, manufacturers working together. You didn't really see, a Toyota working with a Ford or Chevy working with a Toyota, something like that. Chevy's worked with Chevys, Ford worked with Fords, and Toyota's worked with Toyotas.
Toyota's kind of spit themselves in where they could, because they only had 6 cars out there, and I saw them, they pitted with the Chevrolets, so they were kind of aligning themselves with who they felt was best.
Right, and I think when you have such a small amount of cars running your manufacturer, that's what you end up doing. So, the big one happened on lap 120, because again, we talked about this in the beginning and the top of the show. All of the ridiculous blocking and aggression felt by drivers, and I think it was just compounded with the rain being on the way. So, Austin Dillon blocks Clint Bowyer, takes him out, and takes out Chase Elliott, Denny Hamlin, Ryan Blaney, Ty Dillon, Clint Bowyer, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., Kyle Busch, Martin Truex Jr., Eric Jones, Joey Logano, Chris Buescher, Kyle Larson, Bubba Wallace, Ryan Preece, Alex Bowman, Matt DiBenedetto, and Parker Kligerman.
You did that without taking a breath. Good job.
Yeah, all of those guys were involved in some capacity. And after that happened, we ran a little bit more, and then we ran into some rain, and Justin Haley.
And lightning.
Lightning.
Key point in this is lightning.
The lightning delays, the lightning clock that NASCAR put on, that was, obviously a big problem. I mean, it's a safety issue.
It's a safety issue at the very top of the conversation.
Yeah, that I didn't have a problem with that. My problem lies really with the fact that you guys got lights at Daytona on a Sunday night race. What are we doing?
I think here's what I thought about this a lot. One, the race was supposed to be run 24 hours earlier.
Yes.
Okay? So you're already holding people back. Teams are going to have to pay for additional hotel room potentially if you delay it too long. I know, I can't remember where I heard this from now, but someone said that TV had to be set up. Actually, I think it was NBC. TV had to be set up for the Daytona race on Tuesday. Well, we got another Saturday night race and a Friday night race for NBC. They got to be set up probably in Kentucky on Tuesday. So if you delay it any further, that's pushing those things back. And you can't hold NBC coverage back too much. As much as I don't like it, TV probably had maybe a little bit of hand in this. And I think NASCAR had to say, look, we've been here longer than we planned on, and we got 127 laps in. We don't see a window where we can get this thing, rain to stop, track dried in a reasonable hour. And whatever that reasonable hour is, I don't know. But I can't hold NASCAR too much at fault for the decision that they made.
Well, I think, we saw it on Saturday night. They called the race. They said, "All right, we're gonna come back tomorrow," and the rain was cleared. I mean, the rain was cleared. The track was dry by like 10:15. I mean, we could have ran that night. I mean, they did not wait nearly as long as. And I understand that you probably don't want to go live on NBC way late, delay local 11 o'clock newscasts, stuff like that. I get it. But they had an opportunity. They had an opportunity to get the entire 160 laps in on Saturday night, and they didn't do it. They moved it to Sunday, and they didn't even get the full race in. They could have gotten the whole race in on Saturday night, but that's not what ended up happening. You put the fans in a more vulnerable spot with the lightning, and I don't think there was a whole ton of lightning on Saturday night. So you were just sitting there waiting out rain, really. And Sunday ended up being a worse situation for fans anyway. I don't know. We could debate this forever, but the real debate that we're going to talk about today is behind the winner. And Justin Haley was declared the winner after being in the lead when the caution and the red flag came out. NASCAR called the race for rain, and Justin Haley became the winner.
It's important to say how Haley got the lead.
Right.
So what happened was, Kurt Busch cycles to the lead when all this on the wreck happens. And the plan for him and his crew chief agreed on this was when NASCAR gives the one to go to go green, we're going to pit. Okay? Well, Haley was third. Landon Castle was second. When the NASCAR gives the one to go, the 1 and the 00 pit, Haley inherits the lead. He's now the leader. Well, about 20 seconds after that, a lightning strike occurs within the 8-mile radius, triggering a 30-minute clock, which basically essentially puts out the red flag. Okay? So we're sitting on pit road, and that's where the waiting game turns out. So that's how Haley got the lead, was because of a call made by the 1 and 00 teams. So it could have been very easily, if that lightning strike happens 30 seconds before, Kurt Busch is the winner. Or if the 1 pits and the 00 doesn't pit, Landon Castle's the winner. And if those 3 guys pit along with Haley pits, William Byron's the winner. So that's kind of the way this whole thing played out and how Haley got the lead.
So now you kind of have an idea of how Justin Haley got the lead. And in all honesty, Peter Suspenzo making that call, hey, there's rain in the area. There's no way you're pitting. They could say 1 to go anytime they want. There's no way you're pitting.
He had to be watching the lightning strike pattern. Which way's the lightning strike pattern's moving towards? And, there's a tough position for Matt McCall on top of the 1 pit box. But Peter Suspenzo got the call right, and I think that team was maybe paying attention to the lightning a little bit better.
I think it was a big gamble by them, too. It's, all right, let's stay out, let's lead some laps, let's run up at the front, and if rain comes, maybe we can hold off and win this thing.
Exactly.
And whereas Kurt Busch, Matt McCall, you get the 1 to go sign, you're like, oh, okay, we're going to go green 1 lap, all right, let's pit so that we're good to go to the end. Because you're assuming at that point, okay, well, if NASCAR thinks we're good to go to the end, we're good to restart this, then we're going to go ahead and restart this. You don't know what the weather's going to do. You might have an idea based on radar, based on where lightning strikes are happening, but you ultimately are kind of playing it by ear. So that leads us into the next topic of conversation, which is going to be considered my 8-minute rant, give or take. And I've talked a lot about this on Twitter, and you've seen a lot about it on Twitter, of course. I'm certain if you follow me on Twitter, you know my feelings about this. I want to make it 100% clear before I get into this that I am in no way saying that Justin Haley is not a deserved winner, that I am in no way saying that Peter Suspenzo is not a deserved crew chief winner. I am in no way saying that Spire Motorsports is outright bad. I am in no way saying anybody involved on that team at all, or any of the soon-to-be mentioned teams are bad people, are bad guys, nothing. I have ultimate respect for all of these people. My issue lies with how we got to this point. And how we got to this point where Spire Motorsports came in and won this race with Justin Haley is because of the charter system. And my rant today is going to be on the charter system because it is a relevant topic. Nick Bromberg and Matt Weaver both put out articles that were critical. Bromberg's more so than Weaver's. Jim Utter put out an article or an editorial on motorsport.com defending this situation. Jeff Gluck was very confused at how fans were viewing things, whereas Bob Pockris was kind of more about, telling it like it is. So that's where some of the journalists stand. And as also a fellow journalist, here's where I'm going to stand. The charter system was created in 2016 by Rob Kaufman after Michael Waltrip Racing fell apart at the end of 2015 due to the scandal that rocked them after the 2013 chase, where they were caught essentially attempting to manipulate the outcome of the chase. And so Rob Kaufman decided that instead of losing money, instead of losing his investment, he was going to create a fail-safe just for him and unionize the teams through the RTA and create an idea that's called the charter system. And this system essentially says that if you have a car that is run full-time and runs well, you are eligible for a charter. Now, if something is to happen to your team, you say you lose money, sponsors pull out, recession hits, depression hits even, doesn't matter, you can sell that charter and get money. This charter also entitles you to significant purse payouts that weren't previously available. And it allows you money, it allows you TV money, sponsorship money, things like that. It gives you more money. Now, on paper, this might have sounded like a fine idea, but the problem was it's not. What it has created is a can of worms that NASCAR is now going to have to figure out how to prevent. Because what happened last year was Barney Visser decided, alright, you know what, I can't afford this car anymore. I can't afford to run this team anymore. I'm going to have to sell it. I got no other choice. I got no other option. I can't afford it. So he sells it. And it's bought by Spire, which is essentially it's an agency that represents different drivers. Okay? Some of those drivers represented Justin Haley, Quinn Huff, DJ Kennington, guys who have driven for them. Bromberg's article lists this as a serious conflict of interest because, yes, it is. It is absolutely a conflict of interest. It cannot exist. Josh mentioned this when we were talking about it before. It cannot exist in any other sport where an agency is allowed to own a team in anything. Baseball, football, soccer, whatever. An agency cannot own a team. That is a severe conflict of interest. It creates almost an antitrust. It almost creates a trust in racing, in which you have a team that only signs drivers that are affiliated with their agency. So you have that, and that is a severe problem. And the fact that NASCAR allowed this to happen, quite honestly, is a joke. It's a complete and utter joke that NASCAR would not even see a problem with that. Now, again, I'm not criticizing the people behind Spire because they're playing a game. This is a situation of don't hate the player, hate the game. I'm not hating on Spire. I'm not hating on anything they're doing. They're playing the game to the best of their ability. And they're doing it well. They won a race out of it. But the problem is, this charter system allows for teams like Spire to come in, and they don't have the resources, they don't have the ability to run a team. It's not like start and parking. Start and parking was, alright, let's start up a team, and we can run, and we can get some money by finishing last, and, we can use this money to save up a little bit, and, after a while, we can run maybe more of the race distance, we can run more races, we can afford more things, and, that's how Tommy Baldwin Racing got built. That's how Furniture Road Racing got built. That's how Front Row Racing got built. That's how a lot of these teams got built. And that was a different business model. It was a bit more controversial. It was a bit more problematic, but for the most part, it didn't really affect the races. It didn't, for the most part, it didn't have a huge implication on the race purse and things like that. It wasn't a big problem. Now you have a team like Spire, who can get, I believe Bob Pockrass mentioned it, a $6 million loan, buy the charter, and operate on the thinnest of margins, running Quinn Huff, in dead last, and pocket more money from the charter payouts than an uncharted team that maybe runs, 5 positions ahead of them. Or just one position. This creates a substantial problem that makes it difficult and harder for new teams to get in, and it makes the progression of Spire even more difficult. And teams like Premium and Rick Ware Racing, we've seen Premium for the last 3 years do nothing. Absolutely nothing. Rick Ware Racing as well do absolutely nothing. But putz around at the back of the field with no ever attempt to get better. No ever attempt to run better. I mean, they run the full races, I'll give them that. They don't start in park, congratulations. But they're clearly 6, 7, 8 laps down almost every race. And at Chicagoland, you saw, guys like Reed Sorensen getting in the way of the leaders. A guy who should have pulled it off the track and parked it a long time ago, getting in the way of leaders, and you're seeing this, and this is a problem. And so Spire Motorsports just played the game. They are probably going to make out better than any other charter team by this win. And this is going to bode better for them than it would bode better for a team that, say hypothetically, Hattori Racing decided to run the Cup race instead. Let's say the tables were turned and Hattori Racing ended up winning this race. Spire Motorsports would still have gotten more money than Hattori Racing, based on the charter payouts. Now, then you cannot start a team and run like that, even if you're winning race in and race out. That is a substantial and a serious issue that needs to be looked at, that needs to be fixed. The charter system, and this is the last thing I'm going to say on it because I'm about out of time on my 8-minute rant, but the charter system was a cash grab created by Rob Kaufman, essentially, because he decided that I don't like the risks of investing anymore. I don't like the risks of, a gamble. Instead, I'm going to make it so that I can never lose money, even if I completely fail as a car owner. And he did just that. Congratulations, Rob. You were able to sell your 2 charters after screwing over Michael Waltrip, buy into Chip Ganassi Racing, and now just almost destroy the economics behind NASCAR beyond repair with this bogus charter system that has done nothing but hurt the quality of racing, hurt little small teams wanting to get into the race, into NASCAR, and into NASCAR Cup Series competition, and, It just ultimately is a bad move. But congrats to Spire Motorsports for coming in and playing the system the way that they needed to play the system in order to make this race win happen. So again, congratulations to Justin Haley. Congratulations to Peter Suspenzo. Great work by both of them. Congratulations to Tice Carlson, whose brother, I believe, is an investor in Spire Motorsports. Again, congratulations to all of those. But Rob Kaufman, congratulations, because you have now ruined the economy of NASCAR, and you will forever go down in infamy for having done that.
Well, let's clean up a couple of things. Not clean up, but one thing that was talked about, and that Rob has hinted on. They bought the charter for $6 million, and the way the charter works is the better performance over the past 3. The payouts are determined how well a charter performs over the previous 3 years. So, they bought the Furniture Road charter. They finished 11th, 1st, and 2nd. Well, they're going to get more and more payout and percentage of payout based off of a charter that ran 18th, 19th, and 22nd the past 3 years. Okay, They bought the charter for $6 million. They say they're going to get $4 million this year, next year, and the third year, and they're going to run it on a $2 million budget. Run the team on a $2 million budget, and that's how they're going to pay it off. They're not going to run it a full a max investment, if you will, based off of their purse money. So that's just in the sponsorship money. The money for winning this Coca Zero Sugar 400 is just kind of a bonus at this point. So yeah, they're definitely screwed up. It's not right that a team that has a charter can finish 40th and earn more money per race over the course of the year than a team who finishes 39th, and that is at the core of the problem with the charter system. As we discussed before, it is a web of issues that little point just causes. And we talked about the Xfinity Series sent cars home. I think there's only been one or two races this year where we've sent cars home in the Cup Series, because what's the incentive for a guy to run a car like a Kaulig Racing and not be able to earn his fair share of money based off their finish? If they finish 43rd or 40th, you get 40th place finish money. But if I finish 32nd and a guy who finished positions below me gets more money, well, what's the point of that? That's not fair. So
there's no incentive, I believe, to run better based on the charter's payouts. That's the main problem. That's why you see these cars putzing around at the back of the field, never even getting better, because there's no incentive for them to operate on anything more than the margin. There's no incentive for them to lose money for a year or two when they can make money by running dead last and not spending all that money. That's the problem.
All right, so to wrap up the Cup Series, as he mentioned, Haley's his third career start. Bob Flock, Fireball Roberts, Johnny Mance, Bill Norton, Dan Gurney, and Kevin Harvick all won in their third career starts. So, Haley, you joined some pretty good company, particularly when you talk about Bob Flock, Fireball Roberts, and Dan Gurney and Kevin Harvick. So that's a good names to be beside. Spire is only the fourth organization to win a race in the Cup Series, joining Gibbs, Penske, and Hendrick. So you've bailed out a couple good organizations like RCR, Stewart-Haas. So that's good. And it's Peter Suspenzo's fourth career Cup win. His first since Joe Nemechek at the Spring Richmond race in 2003. He also won twice with Jeremy Mayfield in 2000 at Fontana and Pocono. So just to recap a little bit on what the playoff picture looks like in the Cup Series. This is the last time a team like Spire, we were maybe looking at like a Levine family or Front Row to win this race, but Newman holds a 3-point lead over 17th place Daniel Suarez, and Clint Boyer did not make out any better. His June carried into July. And if I'm Boyer and I'm Suarez, I'm a little worried at this point, and need to turn things around quickly. Both those teams have the capability of winning. We know that. But as a whole, Stewart-Haas has been about a leg behind Penske and Gibbs all year long. I look at William Byron and Ryan Blaney and Eric Almirola. I'm thinking that they're in pretty good shape right now based off how they're running in 10th, 11th, and 12th in the points. Compared to how some of these other guys have run as well. So, be interesting to see. You got Eric Jones, as mentioned, Suarez, Eric Jones, Stenhouse, and Menard are kind of those drivers on the outside looking in. So, moving on, we're going to make this quick. Make quick little statements here on the upshift, downshift segment here. Everyone's favorite. Remember, you upshift if you like it, downshift if you don't. We try to have fun with these, and I think we've got a couple good ones on here today. So, the first one, both NASCAR Xfinity Series races at Daytona International Speedway should be 300 miles in length. Do you upshift or downshift?
I'm going to upshift because the stages, it's too short of a race. Saturday, it was a good race, don't get me wrong, but it's way too short. And it's caused guys to be way too aggressive. So I think expanding the mileage would be a good idea for the overall racing quality.
Absolutely, I upshift too. One, it's still shorter than the Cup race. We see plenty of 400-mile Cup races accompanied by 300-mile Xfinity Series races, and the point you made, the fuel mileage thing, and plus the racing is great. Why would you not want another 50 miles of great racing? The next question: Formula E's 2018-2019 season finale is this weekend in Brooklyn, New York. Do you believe that Honda and Chevrolet should push IndyCar, or IndyCar should push Honda and Chevrolet to look into starting an American equivalent electric open-wheel series? Upshift or downshift?
That's a tough question for me, but immediately I'm going to downshift because I think that if Chevrolet and Honda want to get into Formula E, I think that's totally fine for them to do so. But I think it would draw a line in the sand kind of between petrol cars and electric cars, and I don't think that's something that we need to have happen yet. I think at some point most racing will move towards electric overall, but I don't think right now we need to be pushing for an American equivalent to Formula E, because clearly Formula E values the American audience by putting their season finale in Brooklyn, in New York, and having 2 races there as well. So, and they've already raced in Long Beach as well, which was a big deal, which I thought was awesome. They raced, I think somewhere else in the United States, Miami. They raced in Miami. So I think their commitment to the United States is fine. It's good enough that they don't really need to have their own American series.
You hit my point. I downshift. Because they are committed now. They, as we'll mention this later, we'll remind the audience that the series finale, series finale for Formula E moves next year to London and have a doubleheader. And American would be the penultimate weekend in the 2019-2020 season. But still, it's in Brooklyn, and it's in our largest metropolitan area in the United States, and it's in a unique course. So I'm going to downshift. And you mentioned good Chevrolet and Honda are free to get in there, and like you said, I think we'll do hybrid engines first. Hybrid engines are coming, whether we like it or not. As long as we still have the loud vroom vroom, we'll be good. So the next one, Brad Keselowski's move on William Byron to send a message to the field that he will not lift in practice. Do you upshift or downshift the message being sent in such a way during practice at a superspeedway?
Hard downshift, which is what Brad should have done if you lifted. Brad, shut up. I mean, come on. There's no reason to be doing that kind of thing in practice. There's no reason to be doing that kind of thing during the race unless there's 10 laps to go. You're not going to get wrecked by lifting. The new tapered spacer, you have the ability to lift and not lose all your momentum. All you have to do is be safe about it. All you have to do is be smart about it. You don't have to run right into the back of somebody, and then if they cut you off, you just cause a wreck. Why are you bothering to do that? Why would you? We saw that. Austin Dillon basically did the same thing. Clint Boyer did the same thing. You got wrecked by Harvick, who didn't lift. Just shut up and drive.
I mean, it's a downshift. I've said this for a few years. We've had this conversation. I think guys are a little too comfortable in these cars. Well, I'm not promoting the idea that someone should get hurt. That's the last thing I want to see and anyone else wants to see. But NASCAR has been very fortunate in the safety improvements and advancements that have been made, and some of that comes from being in an enclosed cockpit. But my bigger point on this one is that it's practice. William Byron's team originally thought that they could fix the car and go back out with that same car, but they had to go to a backup car, so they had to start at the rear of the field. I don't think that's fair for Brad to do that. But I'm at the end of the day, I'm not in favor of wrecking guys to send a message in such a way at a super speedway. Then Exhibit A of that is lap 120, big one, and that was not intentional on anyone's part, but wrecks like that can happen, and we've also seen drivers in the past get hurt in much less. So, downshift, Brad Keselowski should know better at the end of the day, whether he wants to send a message or not. The next one, Auto Week reports that NASCAR and Hyundai have had multiple high-level meetings regarding the Korean automakers' potential for joining NASCAR following the Gen 7 car introduction in 2021 or the engine revamp in 2022 or 2023. Do you upshift the potential of Hyundai's introduction to NASCAR, Rob?
I upshift. I don't see any. I see it only as a positive. Right now we have, everybody I feel like is a Chevrolet team. You look at the Truck Series and like 95% of the field is Chevrolets. You look at the Xfinity Series, it's like 95 is running Chevrolets. We need more parity, amongst these cars. We mentioned only 6 Toyotas. I mean, come on. Can we get more parity here? I think it's a good thing. I think it'll incentivize maybe more investors to want to come in and run with NASCAR, run with Hyundai, be part of that team. I'm sure a lot of the people who sit back on Facebook will be against it because, I need more American guys. Yeah, I want Dodge back in too, but let's be honest, Dodge is not what it was, when 2001, when it came back. So I think NASCAR, it would be great for NASCAR to get Hyundai in there because, the more interest that NASCAR has in attracting automakers, the better and healthier that they are. So, would I like to see Dodge come back? Yeah, of course, I'd like to see Dodge run. Would I, maybe like to see, something else instead of Hyundai? Maybe I would prefer another manufacturer over Hyundai, but I am completely fine with it, and I'm happy that they are showing interest in NASCAR.
I upshift too. The Toyota model of 6 cars. They want to have 6 quality cars, not a whole lot of cars. Obviously, the more manufacturers you have, the few that limits, and obviously there's a limit on field size. This isn't Langhorne, whatever year that was, where you had 60 cars in the race. There's a limit of how many cars can be in a race. But Toyota has introduced the, I think, Asian market more to NASCAR, and if you can add another Asian automaker, I think that's great. There's so much money over there, so many companies that operate over there and over that operate here in the United States and North America, and also as a result in Europe. It's just more exposure, and I think like you mentioned, it opens up the door for more automakers. I too would like to see Dodge. They're back as well. I think 4 or 5 is the sweet number for manufacturers. It'll be interesting to see what other who else they talk to, because there are reports of Honda that they had talked with Honda, but those kind of died off for now. We'll see. I like it. I upshift. It's good. Next one. Next year's NASCAR Daytona race in August, which will also be the regular season finale, should be run as a day race, either in the late morning or early afternoon start time. Do you upshift or downshift?
You know what? I think that as much as I love Indianapolis being the season finale race, the thing that does frustrate me is that it is not a night race. I liked it being at Richmond because it was kind of like a short track Saturday night, hot track, going for it all, laying it all on the ground. That's what kind of made Richmond the great playoff cutoff race that it was. So I think if they're going to go to Daytona, I think it should just be a night race. I'm going to downshift entirely on the whole question and just throw it all out and say, yeah, no, forget early afternoon, forget early morning. It should just be a night race altogether. I think, that's what it needs to be. I mean, I know that it was good. It was a good race when it was during the day, and I understand that might be the argument there, but have it run during at night, because I think primetime audience, maybe run it on a Sunday night instead of a Saturday night, something like that, to maybe get a few more eyeballs there. But for the most part, yeah, I think it should be run at night before anything else.
This is a difficult one for me. I think the hot, slick August heat in Florida will produce better racing than the cooler temperatures at night. But I also agree with you on the primetime audience, whether that's a Saturday night or a Sunday night, because you don't have NFL in late August, as the race will be next year.
But it's like preseason.
Yeah, it's preseason. Yeah, I mean, now a whole lot of people are watching it. You don't have the Sunday night with NBC as they will have in a week or two after that. So, you know what? Because I don't want to be the guy that makes a decision today, I'm going to leave it in neutral. Because I see the I would like it to be run in the slickest and hottest temperatures possible. Because again, the race yesterday just showed what it could be, and we saw that also in Talladega earlier this year. But I also we want to have a good audience for TV and exposure, so I'm going to leave it in neutral. Now, final question. Sticking with the second Daytona weekend of the NASCAR season, Would you upshift or downshift NASCAR returning the second Daytona race to July 4th weekend in the near future, if not 2021?
Fast and Furious upshift. There's no reason this needs to move. I mean, you know how Fast and Furious, they got like 80 gears or something in there. Yeah, I'm going to upshift all the way into 80th on that one. There's no reason whatsoever that we even need to be moving this race. I mean, I understand that there was a lot of rain, and rain has plagued this race since its beginning.
For 61 years.
Right, but for the love of all that is good, this race is a tradition. It's not. We wouldn't, if it started raining on Memorial Day every weekend, we wouldn't move the Indianapolis 500, to like August or something. We wouldn't do that. You can't just move this race because you don't like the weather. The race is the race because of when it's run. You run this race. It's quite honestly, to a race fan, this is better than the MLB All-Star Game. Screw the MLB All-Star Game, honestly. I didn't watch a darn bit of it. I like baseball, and the Mariners had a few guys in there, so I would have been excited, but I didn't care. I was all in on what always has been the Firecracker 400. That's what it is. It doesn't need to be here in Indianapolis. I'm not looking forward to next year because I'm almost certain I'll probably be there in one facet or another, and I probably will be very hot, very sweaty, and I'm just not looking forward to it. Whereas in September, I'm not hot and sweaty, and I'm enjoying myself, and I'm having a good time at the racetrack. That's a much more enjoyable time for me. So, you know what? Yeah, no, they need to fix that. They don't even need to do it next year. They could just come out tomorrow and say, all right, that whole date swap, all right, forget it. We're not even going to do it. If they don't even do it next year, great, but definitely change it back for 2021 because I think it's going to rain in August too. Hurricane season in Florida lasts from, late May, early June all the way through, the rest of the year pretty much. Until about September, October. So what are you going to do? Run it as the finale race now? Like, come on. You're not going to avoid the rain entirely in Florida and at Daytona. So just keep it the way it is and enjoy it because it's tradition. And I know people sometimes don't like tradition, sometimes do. I'm a traditionalist in this sense. The race needs to stay where it is.
Keep mine quick and simple because I agree with everything he said. And by the way, he grabbed the mic on that one. He was very passionate about that Fast and Furious upshift. Upshift 2, we'll be back. I would like NASCAR to come out and say, hey, this was an experiment to get a temperature feel of not only the fans but the tracks. But I know they won't do that. They won't admit that. And it probably wasn't. So I'm going to upshift, move it back in 21, back to July, and we'll call it we'll give you a break, NASCAR. You tried something. We asked for a schedule shakeup, and you shook it up. Okay, you did. In all fairness, you shook it up. But move it back, and Indy needs to go back to September, or late August. Because it's tough to avoid when it's able to run Indianapolis on the NASCAR schedule. It's gonna be hot. Okay, it's gonna be hot, folks. My dream would be maybe lights at Indianapolis, maybe. Temporary or permanent, one or the other.
My dream has been temporary lights for the Brickyard for the last 10 years now.
I would not have said that 2 years ago. I would have maybe kicked myself in the keister if I would have said lights at Indianapolis, but I'm growing to the idea. All right, so now outstanding performance. One of the final segments here of the day. I'm giving mine to Chevrolet. They stuck to their plan in the Cup race. They stuck to it. You had, it looked like Ford was every man for himself there at the end of stage one, and that jumbled up things. And they could easily have lost that to a Chevrolet driver. And you know what? Chevrolet, Chase Elliott was the biggest team player of the day because he let Byron and Bowman in line on a restart. How do you let two guys in and not lose momentum? I don't know, but he did. So good job for Chevrolet sticking to the guns, keeping to a plan. I would have liked to have seen how the race played out, and how this finish would have come an outcome, but we didn't get to see that. But you know what, Chevrolet, congratulations, worked out for you.
My outstanding performance of the day is, again, and I just spent some time, I guess, criticizing his team, but Justin Haley still gets mine. Finished second in the Xfinity race, drove an incredible race, and then kept his car clean all day in the Cup race, and ended up being in the right place at the right time to take home the win. I mean, honestly, if you look at that weekend, a second and a first, I'll take it. That's an outstanding performance to me. So, especially, it's more so on the Xfinity side because I think that's really where Haley was able to run his best. But, ultimately, Haley gets my pick. I mean, no matter what, this guy had a very successful weekend, posting essentially what is 2 podium finishes back-to-back in back-to-back races. So, good on him. And now we're going to move on to the final segment in the last 10 minutes of our show. It is going to be the featured racetrack compiled by Josh. And again, thank you to Josh for compiling all this information. He does a fantastic job on this every week. Give him a big shout out, big thanks for that. So Josh, why don't you tell us what our featured racetrack of the week is this week?
Feel free to jump in on this one. I know this one might be more in your wheelhouse. But Burke Lakefront Airport. For those of you who are listening who don't remember, that's where the Cleveland Grand Prix of Cleveland was run for 26 years. Again, Cleveland, Ohio, at the Cleveland Burke Lakefront Airport, along the banks of Lake Erie. The course, again, was known for American open wheel racing and the Grand Prix of England, Cleveland. The first race was 1982, the Budweiser Cleveland 500. I've said Cleveland so many times here.
Cleveland Brown is back.
Yeah, there you go. Now they got a good team back in the Browns. Now they want their racing back. That first race was 125 laps on a 2.480 mile temporary course. Bobby Rahal driving the Red Roof Inns number 19 for Jim Truman beat Mario Andretti by 21 seconds. 24 cars started the race, but attrition broke 50%. Only 10 cars were running at the end of that race. 25 more would be run through 2007. With the exception of the 1992 running, each race was basically around this time of year, actually. Late June and about the first week or two of July. The 4th of July time frame is a good way to sum that up. Something special was the Turn 1 Vortex. Okay, you had on the start, you had on the front stretch, you get up to 6 wide on the wide concrete and asphalt paved runways of the airport. And then you had to get down and turn sharply to the right in basically one lane. What do you got there, Rob?
My favorite thing about that Vortex, Turn 1 Vortex, is if you watch the last Champ Car race there, it was actually a standing start. So it was even more chaotic going into the front because, people were spread out, but everyone was still ultra close together. And there were some pretty wild accidents on that first lap. I remember as a kid, that first lap at Cleveland, and keep in mind, I never really watched a lot of kart races, a lot of Champ Car stuff, but I did watch Cleveland because it was wild on that start.
Well, yeah, I was about to mention, there's a lot of wrecks have happened there. A lot of cars have gone to the car graveyard as a result of wrecks on lap 1 before turn 1 of Burke Lakefront Airport. Paul Tracy, Danny Sullivan, and Emerson Fittipaldi each won the race 3 times. In 1984, Danny Sullivan won the race by 2 laps over Chip Ganassi. That's quite a margin of victory. Team Penske car won more than any other team. They had 6 victories. The course would eventually be trimmed down from a 2.48 mile course to a 2.106 mile course. And the challenge to operate because the airport had to shut down a week before. So obviously that causes some time management, and when the race is over, they immediately start tearing down the course. So could you imagine having to delay a race because of rain, like we were just been talking about? I would irritate the airport operator for sure. So it nearly switched alliances, but disgruntled fans said, no, we want to keep it in kart and keep the longer circuit, and so they remained in kart instead of jumping to IRL in the 2000 season. It was a casualty of the Champ Car IndyCar merger. Mike Lanigan of Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing still holds the rights to the Grand Prix of England. Cleveland, I keep saying England. It's coming up there. That's why I keep jumping ahead of myself. But in attempts have been made, but funds have not been able to pay for the sanctioning fees, essentially. And as time goes on, I'm sure it just is becoming more and more difficult for that to occur. And I know runways are maintained heavily because of the nature of its true usage. But is it in shape to host a open wheel race still? I would think yes.
Personally, I don't think it's ever going to come back.
No.
I think fans just need to accept that Cleveland is not coming back. Ask for more ovals, not Cleveland. Anyway, continue.
Yeah. So Paul Tracy, as a before that was lost to the casualty of the merger, Paul Tracy won the final race at Burke Lakefront Airport. 17 cars started, and 11 were running at the end. Current full-time NTT IndyCar Series driver Simon Pagenaud, Graham Rahal, Will Power, and Sebastian Bourdais all participated in the event. There you go. Now, brief talks of it coming back did occur in 2015 and 2016, but nothing materialized, unfortunately. Today's featured racetrack information was provided through racingreference.info, the history of America's speedways, past and present, and Josh Farmer's Motorsports Tribune article titled Tracks We Want Back in IndyCar Part 4, Grand Prix of Cleveland. So, what's in the windshield? Triple header weekend in NASCAR at Kentucky Speedway. Hopefully, this races are good. We'll see. It's good news is this mile and a half package for NASCAR in the Cup Series has been better at night. But what will the temperatures be in Sparta, Kentucky on Saturday night? We don't know yet. Hopefully the rain stays away because a day race on Sunday will not be a good race in Kentucky. I can just guarantee that, unfortunately. But certainly will be exciting Xfinity and truck racing on Thursday and Friday night. So make sure you tune into those. As mentioned before, it's the Formula E season finale. Brooklyn Street Circuit there on Saturday and Sunday. And on Sunday, you got two excellent races as well. The British Grand Prix, that's what I've been trying to say all this entire time. Yeah, Formula One's British Grand Prix at Silverstone. And IndyCar's Toronto Exhibition Place race is also on Sunday. So those two series return after breaks.
I can't wait to start talking again about F2 and F3. And maybe some Indy Lights stuff here and there, but oh boy, I love the British Grand Prix, so I'm very, very excited to see this coming up. So I'm excited to see what's in the windshield for next week. I think we're in for some really great races. I
Absolutely.
think the Formula E races, both Formula E races, are going to be very fun to watch. So I'm excited for what's in the windshield. I don't know who's going to win anything.
No,
but hey. That's the glory of motorsports, is it's hard to predict.
And in Toronto is a very difficult race to predict itself, and I love Silverstone. It's probably my favorite F1 circuit out there. I hope it returns in 2020.
I hope Silverstone returns. You know, the only situation where if Silverstone didn't return, I think the only thing Formula One could do to fix that situation is if they ran it at Donington. You'd have to run it at Donington. You can't run it anywhere else.
No.
But preferably, I'd like it to stay in Silverstone.
Absolutely. Well, with that, that'll do it for this week. Join Rob and I next week as we recap this coming weekend's events in the UK, Canada, and America. It's a great pair of countries there. Plus, tune in to the NTT IndyCar race in Toronto and to see Robert Wickens get back behind the wheel driving a hand-controlled Acura NSX, where he will even pace the field to green, driving that car around. Great to see Robert get back behind the wheel and in the driver's seat.
That's easily the coolest thing that I mean, it was cool when Sam Schmidt did it, but now it's even cooler to see Robert Wickens do it, because then it just makes you hope, man, I can't wait till he's actually better enough to get back behind the wheel of a race car and run these things again, which I do hope happens in the next year.
Absolutely. Before we go, make sure you remind you guys to follow Rob and I on Twitter. Rob is at RPEETERS33, and I am at ROLLER_01. So thank you for all the support listening to us today, and we hope you join us next week. For Rob Peters, I'm Josh Roller, and this was the Racing with Rob and Roller podcast. Have a great week, everybody.